In the research, designing a model or the research framework is a important step. If you can prepare a good model, the research model will guide you how to go about your framing of hypothesis and how to go about your designing of questionnaire to test your hypothesis. So research model is a schematic diagram. It's a diagram of relationship among the different variables those are considered in your research paper or your research project. So it consists of a group of independent variable and dependent variables. So it gives a relationship or it gives a diagram how the relationship is in between the independent and dependent variable. It's not all the time the variable they are all the time independent and dependent. Maybe those variable may be associative. They do have a relation. Whether they are associated or not, you want to test also. So research model is a very powerful instrument in the research, and it should always be backed by some sort of research theory or research framework which is already being framed or already being designed, or sometime you may conceptualize a new relationship which you want to prove. If you are doing on the basis of the existing research or on the basis of the existing model or on the basis of the existing theory, that become a deductive kind of research. But if you yourself conceptualize a new model, a new research framework and new research this model design, and you want to prove, then you have to go about the grounded theory. You may have to prove those model with some sort of inductive kind of analysis or inductive research. So you have to take a call whether you are going. Sometime it happen, it's a kind of hybrid. You are not developing something altogether new, but almost 70-80% of your research frame model is based on the existing framework or the research models that is being adopted by the different researcher. And looking into the your scenario, your situation, you want to customize or you want to remodify with the changing scenario or the place and time, then it become a sum to it will become a hybrid kind of combination of deductive and a partially to some part it's a inductive kind. So let us see how the research this model is being veiled for your perceived risk among the entrepreneur. So on the basis of the different research theory, the entities risk types and the behavioral biases as the moderator. So on the basis of that, the researcher want to frame a research model here. So here, as for the research framework, that is a entity influencing the risk. So there are three kind of entity it is being found from the research paper: internal entity, external entity, and the contingency plan to mitigate the risk through the technical and non-technical risk measures. Looking into the different dimensions of risk, the financial risk, operational, environment, political, legal, marketing, HR, competitive, and technical risk. So going about the next point that is mentioned in to design the research model. So in this framework, the researcher identified there are certain moderator as the behavioral biases, which is controlling the, which is moderating the effect of the different kind of risk on the ability and performance of the entrepreneur. So those moderator are moderating those risk uh, into a actual risk into a format of the perceived risk. The actual risk may be different, but because of the behavioral biases, the perceived risk used to be something else. Like, let me give an example. Suppose your vehicle got broken down in the mid of the road. Without the knowledge of the mechanical defects, your perceived risk may be much higher than the actual risk. The actual risk may be a very small problem may have happened to the connectivity of electronics connectivity or battery problem, maybe some minor engine problem. But because of the ignorance, your perceived risk regarding the problem may be very high. Or sometimes people may also underestimate the risk. Sometimes someone may be suffering from very high chronic disease, but because of the overconfidence, he may or she may underestimate the actual risk. So these are the behavioral biases that may escalate or that may demean the risk that a person or as an entrepreneur is facing in his or in her business. So here the relationship in the model, the entity risk is influencing the different dimension of the risk, the operational, marketing, social, and together they are influencing the construct risk. The construct perceived risk is direct reflection of the moderator, those who are there in between the entity and the different dimension of risk and the perceived risk. So risk is a formative construct and they are manifestation of the different risk dimension, and behavioral biases here is the moderator in this model. So let us see is the influence of the perceived risk on the return. Returns are two types, the actual return and the perceived return. Perceived return influenced by the actual return, moderated and affected by the over optimism and the behavioral biases. The entrepreneur may have a lot of confidence and sometimes he may be suffering from over optimism to dream a very high return on any project or any business area where the actual return on an average in that field may be very low or a moderate. So the perceived return out of the perceived risk is another part that the researcher want to design out of this model. So let us see how the researcher is preparing con uh, connecting all these variable to design a desired research model. So we'll see here, if all of us can see here, the research is put the different component of entity, the internal, external, and the risk contingency. And on the basis of the different entity, like governments is there, environment is there, international financial situation scenario may be there, the risk contingency in terms of the technical, non-technical, the insurance, the hedging process, the entity, the internal is the financial operations and the efficiency of the firm itself, the practices and strength of the firm itself. And these three together are controlling the risk dimensions, the financial, operating, marketing, technical, environment, competitive, legal, political, and HR risk. And these risks are getting moderated on the basis of the behavioral biases that overconfidence, availability, illusion of control, anchoring, framing, mental accounting, conservatism. So they are acting as a moderator on the perceived risk, and on the basis of perceived risk, the person is affecting his actual return into a perceived return. So this is the way the researcher has framed his research framework, and he want to prove or he want to find out through empirical test how far this model is fit also to the real life situation. So So in the earlier example, we found there can be a very complicated research framework, and on the basis of the complicated research framework, then one can design various the research model. Now let me show you another example. Here the person is the researcher is trying to find out the dependent independent construct or the variables latent variable relating to the study of the stock market investment behavior. So in this research, the researcher want to find out the behavioral biases in the stock market, the behavioral approach of an investor. So in this case, if you go through how the researcher has explored and found out the various theory, which is showing the relationship between the different construct, and the author's name, the topic name that is being in the first column, the dependent construct and independent construct in the second column. This way, researcher has tried to find out all the independent dependent variable in his research framework or the research here the model. And let us see how the researcher is going about to design the different models out of. The earlier case we found out researcher prepare a holistic model and it's a complete model. Here we look into or see how the researcher is preparing model, look into the different individual relationship and the dependent and independent variables. So here the next phase of his research finding or the dependent and independent construct, those who are being explored from the different research papers. Now let us see how he has designed the different research models. So here if you look into the research model, here the first model, it is about the mental accounting. The mental accounting in the behavioral biases, how they are controlling, how they are getting associated with the behavioral investment pattern on in term of the mental accounting. On the basis of mental accounting, how his behavior is getting changed in the stock market investment. Here, the researcher is trying to find out the association between two. So here, this is also this association between also mental accounting and the mental accounting. If you'll see the heading mental accounting emotional attachment, and this is about the mental accounting on the basis of source of income and the mode of payment with the stock investment. So let's say the some other model. Here we can see there are three independent variable. Here the researcher want to find out the representative bias and the availability bias on his stock investment behavior. So all the availability bias IA1, IA2, IA3, he has tried to find out, and the influence of those biases of this independent variable on the dependent variable his investment behavior in the stock market. Similarly, the loss aversion and disposition effect, he has tried to find out the association between these two different disposition effect behavior with the loss aversion. So similarly here also he is trying to find out the relationship between the overconfidence biases that is reflective in his behavioral biases and this overconfidence how it is influencing the stock market investment. So IC1, IC2, IC5 they are different form of overconfidence, maybe because of his overconfidence on his forecasting performance, overconfidence on his uh, this job performance, overconfidence on his normal behavioral biases in maybe driving skill, relationship, maintenance, and all. So those overconfidence in his personal life, how it is influencing his professional investment behavior in term of over analysis and overreaction. So this so DC is the dependent, IC is the independent overconfidence uh, variables. So I here stands for the independent and D stands for the dependent. So like this different model are being formulated and prepared by the researcher and on the basis of this research model, he will establish the different research hypotheses. So we'll see how to frame the different research hypotheses on the basis of those research models. So we found the researcher found out the research papers and research methodology and limitations in earlier literature review. Then we saw how to find out the research gaps from this literature review. So on the basis of literature review, the research gaps and the research problems are also identified. On the basis of research gap, research problems, he framed the research questions for this investment research. So on the basis of research gap, research problem, research question, he framed the research objectives. Then he identified the theoretical framework before he designing the research model, the papers, the dependent and independent construct and their relationship. Then we saw the different model he designed, whether it is associative or dependent and independent kind of relationship. That I stand for independent and D stand for the dependent variable in his research model. We saw this research model also earlier, how the overconfidence as an independent variable in his personal life is influencing in the stock investment behavioral biases. So this independent and dependent variable relationship is being shown through this schematic diagram here. So on the basis of the above research model, the researcher framed the various research hypotheses. So the behavior and the approach in the stock investment. So the first model, that is, so the research hypothesis, there is no association between mental accounting bias about the loss in investment approach with the mental accounting bias about the loss in normal life. So there is the way the investor is going for the investment on the basis of the mental accounting bias, and his personal life biases on the basis of the mental accounting, whether there is any association or not, that has to be tested, and that to be tested through the chi-square. Similarly, the relational bias, wherever it is a dependent and independent variable. So let me show the one of the dependent independent variable. The hypothesis overconfidence bias in normal life is significantly influencing the overconfidence bias in the stock investment behavior, or the overconfidence bias. So this will be the alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis, overconfidence bias is not significantly influencing the overconfidence bias in the stock investment behavior. So that is also uh, the, if you look into the next, the overconfidence bias in investment approach is not significantly influencing the overreaction bias in the investment approach. So the null hypothesis should be written on the basis of there is no significant influence of one independent variable on the other, or on the basis of there is no association between the two variables, and on the basis of the test we want to prove or disprove this null hypothesis to say that no, there is a significant influence on the independent variable on the dependent variable, or there is a strong association between the variable. So this is the way we have to, on the basis of theoretical framework, we are preparing the research model, and on the basis of research models, we are framing our hypothesis which we want to test in our further research. So this is all about the research model framing and framing of your research hypothesis. Thank you.